Well, if you're watching this, you're probably interested in bipods, and maybe you're looking for the best bipod for an AR-15, for hunting, for competition, a general purpose bipod that can kind of do it all, or maybe even the best budget option. Well, we're going to cover all of that today. We're also going to talk about the different mounting options. How you mount a bipod is just as important as the bipod itself. And what's on this table represents 3 years of product research and testing so that we could carry, and I could recommend the best bipods based on any particular use. And this video is not about, trying to sell you on one particular bipod or the other. It's about giving you the information so that you can decide which bipod is best for you and how you're going to use it. So let's get into it. Hey folks, Gary here with Paramount Tactical. So we got a lot to cover today. All right, we're gonna go through all these bipods. I'm gonna cover the different features. I'm gonna cover the different characteristics of them and what disciplines I think they are best used in, because what you're gonna be using for competition, bench rest, or hunting, those are very different, right? So we're gonna cover that. Now, when it comes down to bipods, basically what we're looking for, right, is stability. That's what they have to provide. And there's 3 things that are going to contribute to that stability. Number 1 is weight. The heavier the bipod, the more stable it is. Number 2 is the width. That's really important. The wider it is, the more stable it's going to be. And finally, rigidity. Now, 2 of those characteristics I'm willing to compromise on, but one of those I feel is so critical that if that bipod doesn't have that characteristic, it's not going to help you shoot better. And that's the intent, right? But before we get into all of that, as well as the different models that I have on the table that we recommend, and by the way, every single one of these models are on our website. Every single one of them is American made. Every single one of them have a lifetime warranty against defects. Doesn't cover stupid, but if it messes up on you and it shouldn't, it's going to get replaced for you. So those are all on our website, and go check those out. There's links down below. And again, we're going to go through each one of these to figure out which is the best one for you, or at least you can figure that out. Before we get into all that though, I do want to cover different mounting options. Now, when it comes to those mounting options, that's really important because you can take a really good bipod, put it on a inferior mounting point, and you're never going to reach its maximum stability or maximum capabilities, or your maximum capabilities. So one of the most common mounting points that we have up here is the sling swivel mounts. And these work okay, right? This is a very traditional sling swivel mount. These are not bad. They're probably the worst of the 3 that we're going to talk about because they are not very stable. These small little sling swivels just don't give you a lot of structural integrity. They move around. After a while, they can actually come loose. I highly advise against this. So I've reattached this bipod, and even with it tightened down as much as I possibly can, there's still a lot of movement on this because the sling swivel itself, it actually moves around within that. And I've actually seen those sling swivels actually get pulled out, break off, everything else. It is the least preferred and the mounting option that gives you the least amount of structural integrity. So be aware of that. But if you have a rifle like this that only has sling swivels, I'm gonna give you some upgrade options that pretty cheaply and easily you can upgrade this to a much better system, as well as give you the opportunity to have bipods that you can use across different platforms. All right, so the next mounting option that you have available to you that is a huge upgrade over the sling swivels is a Picatinny mount. So you can see right here, I've added this pick rail to what was this KeyMod handguard on this Ruger Precision rifle. And this gives you a lot more surface area. It doesn't matter if it's KeyMod or it's M-LOK, doesn't matter. But what we want to do is make sure that we get a rail section that is at least twice as big as you need it. You can go longer if you want, but what that does is it gives us multiple mounting points on the hardware itself. So we have additional mounting points, gives us some strength and stability, as well as spreading the load of that over a much larger surface area. Using Picatinny rail mounts is a huge improvement over the sling swivels. It gives you a lot more surface area and a lot more structural integrity, but even then, it's not nearly as strong. You can see how small these mounts are. And on this particular rifle, we have a very thick, heavy-duty handguard, but a lot of times on like AR-15s and other similar rifles, they've made these handguards as light as possible, and it just doesn't offer a lot of stability. One mounting option that I definitely would not recommend under any circumstances is there are some bipods out there that will mount directly to M-LOK or even KeyMod. Hopefully, most people aren't using KeyMod anymore. It's kind of an antiquated mounting system. But if you're mounting that directly to the M-LOK, it's usually only 2 M-LOK screws that are mounting that and a very thin rail, and you get a lot of flex out of that, and it's just not nearly as good. Now, if you want the best mounting option that's going to give you the most structural integrity and surface area to mount your bipods on, I highly recommend going with an Arca rail. And you can see right here, this is a Picatinny mount right here, and this is an Arca rail mount. Or even on this is an Arca rail mount, and these will actually take Arca rail or Picatinny mounts. This is one of my AR-15s. It's kind of a recce setup, a mid to long range carbine setup. I've actually mounted the Arca rail onto the key mod, but there again, I have a much longer rail, and I'm actually getting ready to switch this out for a full length Arca rail. What the Arca rail does, not only gives you a better mounting point, but it also gives you a flat surface. So if you're shooting off of barricades or shooting off of bags, things like that, it's gonna give you a much better surface area to shoot off of. But you can see how much surface area that we have here, both with the mounting hardware, that we have 3 pieces of mounting hardware. So we know that's on there very stable, very strong, and it's spreading that load over a large area. So even if we have a thin, more skeletonized handguard like this M-LOK handguard here, you're not gonna break your handguard, you're not gonna end up touching the barrel and messing up the barrel harmonics. So in all circumstances, I highly recommend upgrading to Arca rails on all your guns. Number one, it's going to future-proof. Almost all your rifles these days are coming with Arca. Different bipod mounts come with Arca. Different tripod mounts come with Arca. It's going to future-proof it, make your gun a little bit more versatile. And there's lots of Arca rail options that are going to allow you to upgrade an AR like this that has an M-LOK or even a key mod, as well as kits that are going to allow you to upgrade a traditional rifle that has the standard sling swivels. So Arca rail is by far the best. It is definitely going to be what is going to be used in the future. Picatinny rail sections are kind of going the way of the dinosaur, and definitely a much better improvement over the sling swivels. Now within Arca rails, there's also a couple of options, and let's get to those. All right, so typically this is what your standard Arca rail section is going to look like. And again, this one is M-LOK. This one is made by MDT. They're on our site. You can get those in many different lengths, many different mounting options. But on top of your standard Arca rail, what is also available, and these are on our site as well, is the Arca lock system made by Area 419. Now, what this does is they actually have different grooves in the side of that Arca rail, because you can see right here on one of these Arca lock clamps by Area 419, we have these bars in here, and there's 3 bars right there that actually fit into the Arca rail itself and lock down to make sure that we can't move this forward or back. So it's a really good system. It's kind of redundant, because I can tell you a lot of these different bipods that I have here or other Arca mounting systems, whether it be a tripod or anything else, if you have those adjusted correctly, I've never had a problem with them slipping forward or back. If it is not adjusted tight enough, obviously that can happen. This prevents that. And Area 419 also makes some additional shooting bags and other accessories that are compatible with that Arca lock system. So it's really up to you to decide. Now I can, for instance, on this bipod actually came, we'll talk about this Thunder Beast Arms bipod in a minute, but it came with this Picatinny mount. I replaced it with one of these Area 419 mounts, but I wanted this to be compatible with the standard Arca systems as well. So all we needed to do was take out those bars, just use a Allen key, pull those out, and now I can use this on any standard Arca rail, and you can still use those on the Arca lock rails as well. So some cross compatibility there, but there again, the Arca systems are just so much more stable, so much easier, and just have a lot of added benefits overall. And when you have this Arca system on all your guns, it's a fairly cheap and easy upgrade. And now you have one bipod that you can move from platform to platform, and it just makes life simple and easy, right? All right, so before we get into the different brands, models, and features of these bipods on the table, let's go back and talk about what we're looking for in a bipod, right? We're looking for stability. And the 3 things that are gonna add that stability, number 1 is weight. Weight, the heavier the bipod, the more stable it's gonna be. It's gonna also help mitigate recoil. We got that weight there at the end of the rifle, or at least much further extended. So it's going to help keep that muzzle flip or that muzzle rise down. And anytime that we add weight to a rifle, it's gonna reduce the recoil. So weight's a good thing. unless you're gonna be carrying that gun around a really long time. If you're going in the backwoods hunting, you may not want the heaviest bipod available, but we still want stability. If we don't have stability, what's the point of the bipod? The other characteristics gonna help with stability is the width. Obviously, this bipod, you can see this thing is gonna be much more stable than this one. This one is much wider. So width is definitely gonna help with stability. But if I'm going to have to pack that bipod away, obviously the wider a bipod, usually it's more weight. I'm willing to compromise on width a little bit. I can shoot really well. This is one of the bipods that I recommend. So obviously we're willing to compromise on width. Now let's talk about the key feature that no matter what bipod I'm using, no matter what circumstances I'm using it in, I will not compromise on, and that is rigidity. And let's talk about how important that is. So this is a bipod that I don't recommend. I really like, for most of you know, this is an Atlas bipod. Atlas bipods are great when it comes to the different features they have, the usability, they're fast, they're easy for the most part. There's a lot of good things I have to say about the design features of these bipods. They're really well made, but there's one problem with these bipods that I see it affect our students time and time again when they show up with these bipods, and that is a lack of rigidity. And let me demonstrate that. All right, and by the way, all these guns that I'm handling have been cleared prior to this for all you YouTube RSOs out there. All right, so right here we have the Atlas bipod. And one thing, even when they're completely collapsed, you guys can see how much flex it has in there. What happens is I'm loading up that bipod, I squeeze the trigger, the round goes off, and we get the spring effect. And what that does is it takes you completely off target. And I don't care if you're hunting, if you're shooting competition, shooting long range in general, I think we can all agree that we want to be able to get back on target and or watch our impacts, watch our misses, and be able to deliver fast, quick, efficient follow-up shots. When you have a bipod that has a lot of bounce and flex in it, you cannot do that. And again, with our students in our courses, every time I see someone showing up with one of these bipods or similar other bipods that I've identified as, you know, having this flex issue and lacking the rigidity, it never fails, man. When they miss, they're like, oh, they come off target. They're hunting for that target. They're looking for it. It takes them much longer to get back on target. And they just aren't even able to apply good follow through. They can't see their impacts or misses, and they're coming off target a lot. Now, as bad as this bipod is, even when it's completely collapsed, it gets worse when we get up here. And folks, that is just springing back. And when you have that much spring in it, it is taking you off target every time you pull that trigger. You cannot properly apply follow through, which is one of the fundamentals of marksmanship, right? So we can't stay on target, and we're not getting back on target through that shot. This is my only complaint with this. I wish they would change the design. I wish they would change the materials out of these legs, because for one, I thought it was just a matter of how they built this. We're gonna talk about this one. This is a very similar in design, and it has similar diameter legs, but there's absolutely no flex in these bipods, which we'll talk about in just a moment. So regardless of whether it's Atlas or other bipods, when you're testing them before you buy them, hopefully, all right, this is what you need to look for. This is one of the worst things you can have in a bipod. I'll compromise on weight, I'll compromise on width, I will not compromise on the lack of rigidity on a bipod. I don't want any of this spring action taking place to take me off target every time I squeeze the trigger. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about is different features that a lot of these different bipods offer. And I want to talk about what I think is critical in the adjustability of a bipod versus what are some things that are nice to have. So this particular bipod is the Accu-Tac FC4, one of my favorite bipods, AccuTac in general. I have lots of videos on those. You can go check out that video. I think it lists and kind of shows you all the different features of their current line of bipods. But these things are built like a tank. They're going to last you forever. One thing that's really important to me, regardless of the different features, is being able to adjust this bipod from behind the gun quickly and easily. This is a Gen 2, so they've made lots of improvements on these over the years. They've really refined the different features and how to adjust those features They've just gotten a lot better. So I can pretty much adjust everything on this bipod from behind the gun. So this bipod does have a cant adjustment so we can level the gun. This also allows us to pan left and right, which is a nice feature. We can also adjust the legs up and down, and then we can retract the legs very easily. We can also pull this leg forward, and now we can actually kind of get them on the gun out of the way, or we can have these legs at a 45 facing forward, as well as having a 45 facing to the rear, which I do like. And there's sometime you're shooting off of like a shorter bench or some sort of shooting position where you don't have a lot of real estate. So if you know, I'm trying to get behind the gun, I can put these bipods in this position and have those legs coming backward. I like that, right? That's really nice to have. Also, there are times based on the terrain that I'm shooting on, you know, to get the exact height that I need to minimize that height. Maybe, you know, pull this back at a 45, it'll drop the gun down slightly. Maybe I need to get the exact height, I need to extend the legs, whatever it may be. So those are all really nice features to have. And I think the critical features on here though, that you must have, you gotta be able to adjust the legs, all right, with height, no doubt about that. I think you gotta at least be able to adjust it from sticking straight out on the gun to a 90. That is a minimum. The panning, really nice to have, not critical, is really nice though. But one feature or one adjustment that you have to have in a bipod is the ability to cant that gun left and right. You have to get your gun level before you can shoot it. And you'll see on different terrain, it feels like you're level, but the gun itself isn't level. And without that feature, and there's lots of bipods out there that don't allow you to level the gun out, I wouldn't buy those, all right? I'm not buying those. I'm looking for a bipod that has the least amount of flex in it, that is rigid, and it at least allows me to level that bipod. This is the PC4. So it's a very similar bipod as this. It has all the exact same features, it's just not quite as wide. So a little less bulk on the end of your gun. I think this is another great general purpose bipod for sure. But this also allows us to pan left and right, as well as adjust the cant, and allows us to level the gun. We have multiple leg positions. We can go 45 front or back, and then we can get them straight to the rear, or we can have those legs straight to the front. And the PC series, the PC4 or the PC5. PC5 have slightly longer legs. For me, on most of the guns that I'm shooting, what I like about the FC4 versus the FC5 and the PC4 versus the PC5 is that when I throw these out at a 90 degrees, it's the perfect height on most of my rifles. So with the FC5, we have longer legs that are about 1.5 inches longer or so. And what I often find myself doing to get to the exact right height on those is extending the legs out to a 45 and then pushing it out 2 clicks. So to get to the most comfortable height on my rifle, and for most people in general, the PC5 and the FC5 tend to be just a little bit too long. But if you need that extra length, it's there. And of course, if you don't, you can always adjust both of those bipods down. So if you're really wringing your hands trying to make a decision, should I get the PC4 or the PC5 or the FC4 or the FC5? Maybe I could use that extra length in some situations. It's absolutely true. You might need the extra length, and you can always adjust that bipod down very quickly. So there's nothing wrong with going with the PC5 or the FC5. This is the most compact model that AccuTac carries that also allows you to pan left and right. And folks, I love that. You get about, 40 degrees or so left and right panning. It is really nice when you're engaging multiple targets to where you can just pan to that next target as opposed to moving everything every single time. But I do think when it comes to a general purpose, kind of does everything really well, bipod, the PC4 or the FC4 is just the way to go, or the 5s. Both of these bipods offer a lot of features. You can shoot those in everything from 50 cals to 22s. They're gonna last you a couple of lifetimes. Really well built, American made, just great bipods. Those are what I use 90% of the time. The only downside I see to them at all is they're a little bit heavy. And so they may not be the best bipod for putting on an AR, and they may not be the best bipod for hunting. And just so you guys have a sense of what they do weigh, here we have the FC4, it's 1 pound, 13 ounces. And the PC4 is basically 1 pound, 12 ounces. So very little difference in weight between those two, but these ones are a little bit more compact and easier to throw in your backpack or something like that, or a case for that matter. We'll keep the scale out and we'll weigh some of these other ones in a few for those of you looking for a lightweight hunting bipod, which we're gonna cover as well. All right, so the next bipods I wanna cover are the Thunder Beast Arms bipods. And folks, these are just an awesome bipod. Another excellent choice when it comes to an all-round general purpose bipod. There's a lot of different things you could do with these, from hunting to long range shooting to competition, you name it. I was actually kind of put onto these bipods by Ray Helms over at X-Ring. We were talking about bipods. He's like, have you tried the T-back bipods? I'm like, no, I haven't. We've been a T-back dealer for a couple years now. I just never got around to testing their bipods. It's like, you got to get you a set of those and try those out. I did. Again, these are on our website. If you're interested in one of these, you can check that out. So with this bipod, we have several different leg adjustments that are really nice. And I wish you could feel these. Folks, these are they're much more compact than the Accu-Tac, but they're just as well built and just as rigid. And, you know, again, they're going to last you a really long time. Back here on the legs, how you deploy the legs is complete opposite of the Accu-Tacs. On the Accu-Tacs, we'd actually pull the legs out and we hit a button for them to retract. These are the exact opposite. We hit this button here and it deploys. And then for them to retract or us to adjust the height, we just push on the button and push down on one side or the other and allow gravity to do its thing. So that allows us to adjust the leg height so we can get that even there. On the back here, we have these two little, on the back here, we have these two levers. We're gonna call this 0 degrees, all right, when it's mounted on the gun. And then we would pull this to allow us to deploy them down to the 90 degree or the upright position. On the inside of this though, if we want to adjust these legs at a 45, we would push this button in here and it would allow us to lock it in at the 45 degree angle. So hopefully that makes sense. But then we can still hit the levers on the back and it still will allow us to go from that 45 to a 0 degree. And of course it has one of the features I said it was critical. That's the ability to cant or to level the gun. So we just use this lever back here. It adjusts the tension. We can get it nice and tight to where it's harder to move that, which you want some tension. You don't want your gun just flopping around, right? Nobody likes a floppy gun. All right, we want to be able to put some tension on that. Now we can adjust that and get that gun level. So regardless of what terrain you're on, between the leg adjustments, both in height and being able to angle those legs out, we're going to be able to get that gun perfectly level. So overall, just an excellent bipod. Now with the Thunder Beast Arms bipods, unlike a lot of other companies out there like AccuTac, for instance, you can order the AccuTacs in Picatinny or Arca. Doesn't matter. You can pick which one. This one only comes with a Picatinny mount. As a matter of fact, this was the mount that was on it. Fortunately, they've done some coordinating with Area 419, and this is machined to where you can literally just pull the bolts out of that Picatinny rail mount, and the Area 419 Arca mount will drop right in, and you just throw the bolts back in there, the fasteners, tighten those down, and then you have the Thunder Beast Arms bipod that's gonna work with all your Arca rails. But overall, just an awesome bipod that's gonna work really well built, easy and fast to deploy. I think these and the Accu-Tac are some of the best bipods that are gonna kind of do it all for you. What I will give these a leg up on when it comes to the Accu-Tac is they are a little bit lighter. There again, folks, weight is going to add stability. If I can, I'm probably going to be using these heavier bipods because that additional weight out at the end of my muzzle is really going to help stabilize that gun and reduce recoil. But let's get a quick weight on these. All right, so we're just at 1 pound. So this is about half the weight-ish of the FC4 and the FC5. So just barely under 1 pound, under 16 ounces, 15.8 ounces. So given these are under a pound, not only are these a great long range general purpose bipod, probably also a good option for hunting. Again, they're just a lot lighter than the Accu-Tac bipods. All right, so let's talk about the budget option on the table. And what we have right here are the MDT grind pods. Folks, I think this is probably one of the best solutions as far as these cost $200. There is no other bipods that I've found under $200 that I would recommend. These actually punch way above their weight class as far as the features, the overall stability. These are also probably one of the most perfect, if you want a lightweight AR bipod, I think this is where you need to be. The features on these are great. We can extend the legs. We don't get any of the spring-loaded features. But the big thing about these folks is these legs are extremely rigid. So they allow you to get on target, squeeze the trigger, have good follow through, stay on target, and get those follow-up shots if we need to. I mean, this is just really well made overall. You have all the features that are required back here. We loosen that up. We can, again, cant left and right and level that gun. It does allow us to put some tension on there. You can get these in Picatinny or Arca, so there's some versatility there. Great bipods, and probably the cheapest bipods that I would recommend. All the other cheaper ones just don't have the features that are required or don't have the rigidity and stability that these offer. So those are on our website as well. Great bipod for the money. They're also pretty light, so another great option for hunting. All right, there we go, basically 1 pound. So they're pretty much the exact same weight as the Thunder Beast arms, just significantly cheaper. All right, so one thing I did forget to point out when it comes to the MDT and the Thunder Beast arms, the only negative on both of these is the fact, and it's kind of a big deal to me because I use this feature a lot, is we can't angle the legs back at a 45. Whereas, you know, again, with the AccuTacs, if I need to shoot off, whether I want the eggs angled out 45 to the front or 45 to the back, because I do use that feature quite a bit. You can't do that with the Thunder Beast Arms bipods or the MDT grind pod. So just be aware of that, and that may make a difference in your decision making. All right. So now we're going to talk about the most interesting and innovative bipods on the table. These things are an engineering marvel. But before we do that, if you haven't done so already, make sure you like, subscribe, throw a comment down below, and hit that bell notification so you're notified when we make new content like this. Also, folks, if you're interested in learning long-range shooting and you want to do it the right way, go check out that video. It'll tell you all about our XP Long Range Academy. We've teamed up with Ray Helms from X-Ring. We are bringing you the absolute best long-range training. And if you want to not waste time, effort, ammo, and money trying to do this on your own, I'm telling you, the money that you'll spend on these courses will get you so far ahead of the power curve, and they'll pay for themselves. We're gonna make sure that you learn the right way. You're gonna know everything you need to know about what makes a good gun, a good optic. We're gonna teach the fundamentals of marksmanship. We're gonna make sure that you understand the ballistics that are involved with long range. And when you leave there, you're gonna be so capable, so happy, and you will have learned in the most efficient, the least expensive way possible. So go check out that video about the Academy and come train with us. I promise you, you'll be glad you did. All right, so what we have here is the Protean Innovations XTXA Stability Bipod. There's so much to cover on this, I had to bring over the spec sheet just so I didn't miss any of it. But basically, you have the fastest deploying bipods that I am aware of. You can, again, we can angle these out to 45. Actually, we can go from 25, 45, 60 degrees, 75, and 90, both front and back. We can do that because we can spin this whole thing around. I'll show you that in just a second. The other cool thing about this is that we can adjust the height of the bipod. We just hit a button right over there, hit these buttons on the side, and we hold that button down to adjust them down to retract the legs. And then on the back here, folks, we have these thumb wheels. And these thumb wheels allow us to adjust the width of the bipod. Check that out. But we can go from right there all the way out to, let's see how far we can get this. Look at that. Oh my God. All right. So that's as wide as they go right there. But there again, we can stow them out of the way or redeploy them just as quickly. So a lot of cool things. What about canting? All right, we can cant left and right because there is a tension screw on the front and back of this. I'm gonna pull this off and show it to you in a second. But I have it set to just the right amount of tension to where I can get that gun level and it stays right there. I can bring it over here, it stays right there. Wherever you put it, you can adjust the cant, get the gun level, and it stays right there. It is one of the coolest things ever. Well, what about panning left and right? Well, back here, folks, there is a lever. We throw this left or right. All right, we throw that, and now we can pan left and right. Maybe we want to spin this thing all the way around. We can do that. So one of the coolest bipods that you'll ever see, you throw that lever back, and it just locks in that position. Back here, we do have a pistol grip that you can buy. That's a separate accessory. Again, they're on our site. You don't need the pistol grip. You can actually just, again, we have a trigger back here that allows us to hit that trigger, and that's what's gonna allow us to adjust the angle of the legs. From there, all the way to there. And there's a couple of settings, there's several settings in between. You can get this in an Arca or Picatinny rail. Now, what do I think these are best used for? Well, they're definitely kind of an all-purpose. You can use these for just about anything. I think for competition, they're really good. For hunting, they're really good. Let me throw this, put this rifle away. We'll get a weight on this thing. Also, this is actually one of the best designed Arca lock levers that I've seen. I like the way that this is made, but let's get a weight on these because they're extremely light. All right, so we're zeroed out there. 1.4 pounds. And I'm gonna throw these back on the gun in just a second, but even though that we have some of the lightest material and the kind of the thinnest legs, we still aren't getting all the flex that we get out of the Atlas bipods and many other bipods out there. And I'll show that to you. All right, so we're not getting a springing effect. All right, even when they're fully deployed, they still don't feel bouncy. Now, there is a little bit of movement in the joints, right? So as soon as you lean into this bipod and you load the bipod as you should be, making sure that you have a direct interface with you, the shooter, and the gun, when you put some pressure on this bipod, everything locks up nice and solid. Now, I think these bipods are the absolute perfect bipods for any sort of sniper operations, especially using a gas gun, whether that's law enforcement or military, or if you're shooting any sort of DMR matches, or have a DMR style rifle, right? Designated marksmanship rifle or defensive marksmanship rifle. If you're shooting that type of rifle or you're shooting those types of matches where you're moving from position to position and you need to be able to manipulate your bipod quickly, deploy that bipod quickly, folks, I don't think they get much better than this. These aren't cheap, but they're a really good versatile bipod, and everything on them is just really well designed and really well made. Now, the owner of Protean Innovations, super smart guy, Kyle, I've had him on the podcast before, and we've talked a lot. I think this was the first generation of these, and they do have several models. They have the standard model like this one that doesn't have these thumb wheels to adjust the width of the legs. But I've given him a lot of input on these, and he's made a lot of additional improvements on these since the original model. So even the original model, which I think is the XTX, I can't remember them all. Go to our website, they're on there. But you can check out the different features of each one of these. But the premise of all of these is the same. They can all deploy using this pistol grip. All of them have the same features as far as cant, as far as panning left and right, and as far as the leg deployment. But some of them don't have the width adjustment like the XTXA, whatever this was. All right, so super cool bipods. I mean, these bipods are just excellent for any type of shooting. They're so light, they're great for hunting, they're quick deploying for hunting, but I do think where they really shine would be that DMR style shooting for sure, or any sort of sniper operations. I think these are an excellent bipod for that. So go down to the link below or just go to Paramount Tactical. You can check out the different models and see if those are something that you want to have. All right, so last but not least, and probably the most specialized bipods on the table right now are the MDT SkyPods. We have the single pull, the double pull, and the triple pull. And folks, these are bipods that you are primarily going to use for like PRS style shooting. I could also see these being used for hunting in some different applications, and we'll talk about that. But these are pretty specialized bipods. I don't think that they are the best for, you know, general use, right? General shooting, whether long range, whatever it is, prone shooting from a bench, whatever else. But I will say there's some situations in PRS style competitions, and maybe even some real world from hunting and maybe even sniper operations, that these can do that you're not going to use very often, but when you need them, they're the only things that can do what these are going to do. All right, so when it comes to the features on these, obviously the biggest advantage these have is the elevation they can provide. You can see that these extend extremely far. So beside the leg height adjustment, we can also hit these buttons back here that allow us to extend the width of these, which is really nice. And then back here, we can actually adjust our cant, make sure that we get that gun level as possible. And one thing I do like about the integrated mount is that it is compatible with both Arca and pick rail mounts right all in one. So that's a really nice feature that these offer. So again, these things just do some things that other bipods aren't going to be able to do, but they are extremely specialized. Let's take a look at the double pull here. We see how far that thing goes. Look at that. Another thing I will tell you for sure is that these do not have any flex, just like we had in the Protean, where there's a little bit of tolerance in between the joints, but once you tighten those things up, even fully extended, folks, there's just no flex in this. They're very, very rigid, which is exactly what I would want if I'm using these bipods. Here we have the triple pull, and these things are just ridiculous, right? So we can pull those all the way out. And not only with competition shooting, I would also say that these would be great for hunting. You know, if you're hunting in some tall grass, you know, it's almost like having a tripod length bipod. You know, how far these things extend is just nuts. These are also extremely well built. So I did a quick comparison of the SkyPod up against some of the AccuTac bipods a couple years ago. And that was a different generation. They've made lots of improvements on these as far as the build quality, the fit and finish on these. They've come a long way. These are not cheap bipods. They are probably, like I said, they're the most specialized, but when you need a bipod to do what these can do, they're the only ones out there that can do it. They do have interchangeable feet. Of course, the AccuTacs do too. You can get sled feet on those. You can get spiked feet. You can actually get spiked feet for the Thunder Beast Arms one as well. So there's lots of different options. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, the cheapest bipod I would recommend, and a great AR bipod in general, I think is the MDT GRND-POD. You can't go wrong with any of the AccuTac models. You may not need panning, so there's some other models. All the AccuTac models I recommend. I just have these two up there as the most two feature-rich models that they offer. Those are the two that I use the most, the FC4 and the PC4. I love those. As a matter of fact, the PC4 bipods are what we're gonna be using on our XP Long Range Academy guns. We got one of those back there. I'm getting ready to do a full video on the different features that Ray and I chose for those rifles, the optics, and all the different accessories, and I'll go over that and why. So as far as a general use bipod, you can't go wrong with the AccuTacs. I also think the Thunder Beast Arms are just a really great general use bipod as well. Now, when it comes to the AccuTac, as far as like PRS, where you're trying to deploy those bipods very quickly, I don't think AccuTac is the best option for those. I think something like the Thunder Beast Arms is a little bit quicker, a little bit easier to adjust some of the different features, but there again, there's some features and adjustment capabilities that the AccuTac have that the Thunder Beast Arms or some of these other ones don't have. And then of course we have the Protean bipods. These are just a great bipod for not only all around shooting, for competition, quick adjustment, quick setup. You really can't get any better than that. And then of course the MDT SkyPods, right? These are also great bipods. So hopefully I've given you enough information that you know what makes a good bipod. You know, you gotta have stability, and the things that are gonna help with stability is weight, width, and rigidity. Do not compromise on rigidity. If you get a lot of flex in that bipod when you're loading that bipod up, you are not gonna be able to stay on target. Just realize that. So stay away. There's too many other good options out there. Now that was just as a quick of an overview that I could possibly give you on all these bipods. There's some of these bipods I've been meaning to do separate reviews on, and I just haven't got around to it. So I figured, as far as trying to help you choose a specific bipod, maybe for hunting, for competition, for general purpose, this is what we got. And these are the ones that I recommend. So hopefully you found that helpful and informative. I'm sure I left some things out. So if you have additional questions or comments, put those down in the comments down below. I will definitely answer that or respond to them. And you know, while Guns and Gear is great, what we're really about is training. So make sure you go to ParamountTactical.com, go check out our upcoming training schedule. Jump in our XP long range courses. And we also offer courses for defensive handgun, tactical carbine, CQB, night courses, driving courses, you name medical courses. Come train with us. I promise you'll be glad you did. And for all of your gear needs, make sure you go to ParamountTactical.com, where we only carry gear that we've personally tested and we believe in. But until next time, stay armed, stay ready. We'll talk to you soon.